What were the Nephilim? For those of you unfamiliar with the term, there's a verse in Scripture, specifically in the book of Genesis. It's in a part of the Bible where God is looking over the earth before the flood, and there's a little, almost a throwaway line in there, where it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. It says that the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children with them. These children were apparently called the Nephilim. And it's heavily implied that the sons of God were angelic beings. So it's definitely something that sparked people's imaginations. And whenever you have something that piques somebody's interest, but there isn't really a ton of information about, it usually inspires wacky theories and wild speculation. So who were the Nephilim really? Are they really some hybrid creature, a cross between angels and humans, or something else entirely? And what does the Bible have to say? Let's take a look.
Attention, bargain shoppers.
Okay, so the Nephilim. Why don't we first read from the passage that this is found in? So we're looking at Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown." Okay, so this sounds definitely strange to modern readers. The Hebrew word for Nephilim often translates as giants, but its root implies fallen ones, those who have fallen in some way. So when we look at the sons of God, what this exactly is has been debated. In Genesis 4 and 5, for example, it describes two lineages, one through Cain and the other through Seth. And God's covenant people are sometimes referred to as God's sons. So this might be talking about the line of Seth. However, the oldest and most widely held interpretation is that the sons of God are fallen angels, aka demons. And this description of them is describing a time before the flood. So they hint that the appearance of the Nephilim was part of a broader narrative of increasing corruption on earth. So a big part of Genesis is outlining God's divine order. So if we're viewing this passage from the mindset of the early Jewish readers, this would have had theological significance to them because it touches on themes of boundary crossing, on going against God's divine order. You've got these spiritual beings interbreeding with humans. It's something God didn't intend. And additionally, the kingdoms around Israel at the time, they claimed to be founded and protected by like warrior god kings, these ancient half-god, half-human creatures. So the biblical author is basically saying, look, those heroes of old, they are an abomination. They shouldn't be honored. They're not something to look at in reverence. The Nephilim are a result of spiritual rebellion against God. Now, granted, the verse in the Bible is short and there's not a ton of context. We could get a little more in-depth of an interpretation if we look at the Book of Enoch. However, it's important to point out that the Book of Enoch is not canon. What this means is that it was written around the same time as many of the books in the Bible, but both Jews and Christians don't feel that it's accurate enough to be included in Holy Scripture. That's not to say it's wrong necessarily, but take it with a grain of salt. But in any case, the book details a mythology in which a group of angels known as the Watchers descend to earth, marry human women, and produce the Nephilim. And the Nephilim, these giants, they're portrayed as violent, consuming the earth's resources, and leading humanity further into sin. So this just re-emphasizes the meaning that the Nephilim symbolize chaos, corruption, sin, and these are all the consequences of spiritual rebellion. I will say, I personally am not convinced that the Nephilim were real, literal things. It seems more to me that this is a response to people's belief at the time in these half-god, half-human, ancient warrior kings, a sort of fusion of myth and theology mixed with a moral warning. But I could definitely be wrong on that. We do know that angels have free will. We do know that angels have rebelled against God in the past. We can look at Jude 1:6, which says, "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day." So, I'm not really sure. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, please feel free to like and subscribe. It does help out the channel. I'll leave the verses used today in the description. My name is Adam. This is Bargain Bin Theology. And remember, you get what you pay for.